Welcome to the Shed and Shine podcast. I am Gino Wickman. This is where Rob Dube and I help driven entrepreneurs shed their shit, free their true selves, unlock true entrepreneurial freedom, and shine. We truly appreciate you taking the time to spend with us, and we hope to make a huge impact on you.
Hey, everyone, and welcome to the Shed and Shine podcast, where we discuss how looking inward is the key to unlocking true entrepreneurial freedom. My name is Rob Dube, and I am here with my very, very good friend, Gino Wickman. Hi, Gino. How are you?
Great, Rob. How are you?
I'm doing well. For those of you that might not know, Gino and I are the co-authors of the book Shine, How Looking Inward is the Key to Unlocking True Entrepreneurial Freedom, and the co-founders of the 10 Disciplines. And I always like to say, and I know I speak for Gino when I say this, how much gratitude we have that you are listening in today. You have a lot of choices on how to spend your time, and we truly appreciate you taking the time to learn with us. We always hope to make a huge impact on you. So today we are going to be discussing the topic of the true self. What the heck is the true self, Gino?
Rob, I have no idea. I was hoping you were going to answer that for us.
Well, I always thought I'd start with you and then we could come back to me, because we actually created a definition for how we see the true self. But first, I'll just say, as we mentioned in the book, it's referred to as a lot of different things, sometimes referred to as essence, spirit, innate self, authentic self, life force, soul. We actually talked about, should we use the word soul at one point? Is there anything I'm missing here before I keep going?
No, those are all the words, and I jokingly say I have no idea because, at the same time, I feel like I know what it is, but man, this is going to be a fun conversation, man. So I hope we create some real clarity because it's hard to get your arms around. It's so clear and so not clear at the same time. So I can't wait for the conversation.
Well, one thing I love about reading the definition, and it's a little long, it's 3 paragraphs. So as the listener, I hope you'll stick with me and I hope I don't stumble on my words because I am going to read it. But what I have noticed is, and I don't know, Gino, if you've had a similar experience, but what I notice is when I read it, I always look at people, and when I see bobbing heads, like bobbleheads, I know we're on to some. The bobbing that I see is the up and down, like you're doing now. It's like, yes, I get that. That makes sense to me. Have you had a similar experience?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So let me read it. Your true self is the real you, the most authentic version of who you are. It's unshaped by societal expectations, professional roles, or social masks. It's the core identity that remains constant beneath the various hats you wear in different areas of your life. It is typically buried behind your ego, personality, and the suit of armor that you've developed over your lifetime due to pain, trauma, and conditioning. Freeing your true self allows you to be authentic, free-spirited, liberated, unconstrained, unbounded, and unapologetic. It allows you to realize your full potential, live in alignment with your values, passions, beliefs, and desires, rather than confronting to societal norms or external expectations, and bring the best version of yourself to everything in your life. Your true self wants to be free. It can be free. When you are free and fully your true self, you will experience peace, bliss, and love. The opportunity is to remove everything preventing you from being your true self. Then you will be more creative, intuitive, impactful, and in flow. And of course, you will shine as bright as possible. Okay. So you let that sink in a second, because the heads do bob. I think when people see that, the first thing I always think that what I notice is they notice themselves realizing that they are conforming to societal expectations. They are showing up different than their true self. in their professional roles. And then I always like the hats that you're wearing. I picture people taking on and off these different hats, and they're acting in different ways in their lives. So I'll start here, and maybe it's too high level, I don't know, but what would you say is possible in the lives of our listeners or our readers of the book if they work to free their true selves?
Yeah, and as I'll add a couple other words and maybe perspectives on that
Yeah.
as I answer that question and as we answer that question, um, because so we're talking about what is your true self, and it's almost like to know what it is. It's also helpful to know what it isn't, and that what you read, it's so beautiful in terms of really helping show both sides of it. And I love at the end of there. So there's a Rumi quote, a philosopher from like the 1400s. And in so many words, I won't get this perfectly right, but he talks about how, we are love, pure love. And our job in this life is to remove everything that isn't love. And so that when we talk about what it isn't is this social conditioning, are these fears, these traumas, these layers, our personality, the persona we created, the armor shield we created, it is not any of those things. And so if we can somehow remove that then leaves what it is. And so what it is, again, just some additional words, but I believe it is our essence. It is pure love. It is intuition. We're connected to all that is. It's this incredible power source that we can tap into that is just pure, bright light and vibrating at the highest level. And so that's what it isn't. That's what it is. And so with that, could you just repeat your question, Rob, just so.
I just say what is possible for people if they work to free their true selves.
Yeah. And so, when I talk about, I use that word intuition. And so I just want to give one example. And that is what I find is when I'm connected to my true self, I get these incredible downloads. I get these inspirations. My intuition is online. There's a knowing that exists when I'm in that place. And it's where I get my best ideas. It's where my creativity comes from. It's where peace comes from. And so those are some of the things that's possible, is just better thinking, better ideas, better clarity, and just incredible peace and bliss.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to go back to many, many years ago. And there's a story that you've told at different times. And it was that story about your 30th birthday party. And I was thinking about this when I was preparing the societal expectations and how you show up in different ways. And it was a surprise party. And when you walked in, you saw all these different factions of people in your life. And you thought to yourself, who am I going to be today? There were employees, business partners, family, et cetera, et cetera. And I wondered if you can speak a little bit to that, but also giving some thought to how that would look different for you today. And I tie that into what's possible.
Yeah, for sure. So, the way I describe it is when I walked into that surprise party and looked at those 100 sets of eyeballs, there were 6 factions of my life there. And so, there was my family, my wife's family, my business partners, my employees, my high school friends, and then my newer friends at age 30. And what I realized is I was a different person for each one of them. I was literally a different persona. And it was a persona that I created. So going back to age 15, when I created this tough guy persona to protect me and survive in life, I realized I was this chameleon that not only did I do that in general, I did that for each one of those factions. I was a different person when I was with my family. I was a different person when I was with my wife's family. I was a different person with my employees, different person with my high school buddies. So whenever I'm with my high school buddies, I instantly become 18 years old again, or 16 years old again. And then just a different guy with the newer friends. And it was just a light bulb moment that I realized the chameleon that I was. I realized how exhausting that was, how heavy that was, the energy drain that it was. And that was my wake-up call to say, I'm just going to be me going forward. Now, it wasn't like flicking a switch. It was then a journey to just shed and continue to be aware of where I was being a chameleon and where I wasn't being me. And so now, shoot forward, I have the luxury of looking back at that 26 years later. And it's just been this constant shedding and awareness of me just being me. And I'm still not 100% there. I'm a work in progress. That's what I love about this work that we're doing is with our clients, with our audience, with our readers. We're just on this journey with them. We're all trying to figure it out and all getting closer and closer to our true selves. So, but shoot forward in time again, I don't know how close to 100% I am, but it's just a much different, freer, lighter, more creative, more energizing life.
Yeah. I remember back in my own personal experience, similar time frame. I remember I had a group of friends and there was an awareness that began to come up for me that we weren't aligned anymore. I wasn't my true self with them and I kind of had to break up. And I have to tell you, it was scary as hell. It was shaking up my world. I wonder, did you have any similar experiences? Because I think for many, this is scary. It can shake up your world. I'm not trying to over dramatize it, but it will have you look at your life in a different way.
Oh, there's no question, and as you were talking there, what I'm reminded of is what's different in terms of a feeling. Okay.
Yeah.
And so shoot back to age 30 in that situation and just where I was in my life, there was just like an anxiety, a discomfort in my own skin, an intensity that I felt inside, where shoot forward now, there's again, just that calm and that peace and that comfort. And so to your point, with my high school friends, for example, there'd be every indication that I would, part ways with my high school friends because I'm so different than what I was back then. But what's interesting is I'm actually closer to my high school friends now. Mm. And I was terrified. Literally, that is the perfect word. In the last 4 to 5 years, as I've really started having this awakening, I've been afraid to be my true self with them. And because I thought they would leave me, so who's going to leave first? But as I'm more my true self, they're also more their true selves. And I feel more connected to them than ever. So it's kind of freaky weird.
That's good.
Because I don't think it works out that way every time. I think it's kind of just the opposite where you part ways. And so that's kind of a blessing that it actually brought us closer. Yeah. But there are some friends that now are a little more distant, maybe some family members, things like that. But ironically, it brought us closer together, which I would have thought it would be just.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you brought that up because the opposite can happen, actually. It can bring you closer together. People will feel a deeper connection because of that and appreciate you for the true person that you are where you weren't before. And also, they might be inspired by what you're doing and they might ask you a question or two about what's changing.
Yeah. And it prompted another thought because what I realized, with them, I was always putting on a show for them, because we're going all the way back to like some of them I've known since elementary school. But I think back to age 15, 16, 17, I was always putting on a show, even through my 20s, I should say, and into my 30s. And I just don't put on that show anymore. So it's like easy now. That's the best word I can think of.
There's so many paths I want to go down right now, and I'm just trying to figure out which one to go down because, like one thing that came to my mind is, we talked about, I think it's Michael Singer, it might be David Hawkins, where when people have their hooks in you. Is that Singer?
That is
Hawkins. Hawkins, that's right. Yeah. So people have their hooks in you. And this is one of the things, or you might have your hooks in them. You prompted that thought when you were talking about your friends from high school to me. When you are freeing your true self, you start to notice more who you have your hooks in and who have their hooks in you. And did you notice that? for you with the,
Yeah. And that was not so much with high school friends.
uh-huh.
That would be more family
Yeah.
and newer friends and colleagues, so even in my business world, I started to really get clear on the hooks that exist.
Yeah.
And the term that Hawkins also uses is attachment, where you're feeling attached. So you're either feeling
That's
attached to
good.
someone or they're feeling attached to you. And so just this unhealthy relationship. And
Yeah.
so, the idea is that the healthy side of it is where you're choosing each other. In other words, you just enjoy each
Yeah.
other's energy. You enjoy being around each other. There is no attachment. There are no hooks. There's no ulterior motives. And so I heard a friend share with me, it's called real friends or deal friends, so is there like a deal going on here? Is there a motive, a reason for this relationship? Or is it just that we just
That's so good.
enjoy being together?
Yeah.
So that's where I noticed it more. And so even with my friends later in life, even those friends that were there at that 30th birthday party that were newer friends, in the last few years, I'm starting to have these conversations with them and just be more of my true self. And they're not running away. So the fear was always they're just all going to run away, or I
Right.
was going to run away because if they didn't like it, I was running away. And so ironically, it's bringing us closer. So I've been fortunate from that standpoint.
Yeah. We write in the book, your ego is not happy that you're reading this book right now, and that the ego has us trapped in a prison and does not want us to break free. Can you expand on that?
Well, let's see if I can expand on that. Our ego's intentions are good. Okay. And so we came to this planet innocent, our true selves, and then the world got a hold of us, and the world, can be tough. And so we develop forms of protection. We get conditioning. We're taught things. We learn things from the people around us that love us and they think the intention is good. But ultimately, what happens is our ego is just simply protecting us from things that have happened in the past, that things that are afraid are going to happen in the future. And so its intentions are very, very, very good. They're just wanting to protect us. And sadly, what happens is we create, I like to describe it as a cocoon, as I've shared in one of my riffs, this cocoon of protection. And we create this illusion in life, this persona in life that we think is serving us well, that we think is what is best for us. And it's just not reality. It's not our true selves fully expressing itself. And our ego is just terrified of us fully being our true self because it's the unknown. To just let go, let your freak flag fly, fully be you in the world. That is terrifying to the ego because it's still trying to protect us from that saber-toothed tiger from a million years ago.
Yeah. So, we talk about the 3 discoveries and then the 4 levels that are under discovery number 2. I'm not going to get into the specifics of everything right now. We will do that. But, one of the levels is your true self is in there. And the ego is fighting to keep it in there, as you're saying. I'm curious, when did you realize that your true self was, quote unquote, in there?
Yeah. It was about 3 years ago. So my early 50s, I understood the concept relatively, but it really came clear because I still was struggling to define the ego up until, again, almost 52 years old, which is really wild because I had been trying to understand it for at least 22 years when I first got pinged. So, and I shared this in the riff because I have this visual image of what it looks like, and that's the best way for me to understand it. But I just clearly saw how it is this part of us that is just simply trying to protect us. It's our mind. It's just our mind at work doing what it does well, thinking. But unfortunately, it can get us in trouble because part of that thinking is thinking about everything, the past, the future, all the fears, what could happen. And so I just clearly saw it as this kind of Teflon shell, this armor suit, this cocoon, that there is our true self locked inside of there, wanting out. And the ego is just surrounding us and protecting us. And it's, again, all of the traumas, the fears, the worries, the conditioning, the lessons we've learned, some good, some bad.
I'm curious if in any way, when you started to recognize this, if you felt in any way uncomfortable or scared. Like, well, what are you talking about?
Recognizing it wasn't scary. Addressing it was scary, because what I find is as this isn't the right word, but I'm going to use this word, as I confront the ego strikes back. So that's when it gets scary. Okay. And so as I, and I've shared this, where reading Letting Go was a very profound experience for me. That book was very profound. And as I started to confront these things and start to let go of these things, my ego was resisting it. And that's when it got scary. That's when, in meditation, in dreams, just throughout the day, it would show me stuff and try to scare me. It was resisting me letting it go. And again, it's still a process. I don't think I have fully let it go, but I'm on that journey. But that's when it gets scary, is when the ego really resists, and it tends to show you your deepest fears because it does not want to be let go of.
And it does that often in ways that we make decisions. And I'm curious, when you make a decision, how do you tap in nowadays to your true self so you can do an inside out decision versus an outside in decision?
Yeah, what I've learned for me is my two greatest ways are meditation and contemplation. And what I realized is, while creating EOS over, a 20-year period, of really the main 5 years, but also as I look at it, that whole 20-year period, I would take what I call a clarity break, and I would go sit in a coffee shop for a minimum of 2 hours. And what I've now realized, looking back, is I was tapping into my true self there and didn't realize I was doing it, because I would get incredible inspiration, clarity, creativity.
Yeah, interesting.
And that's when EOS was really formulated. Those were the most impactful formulations. And so I would be out there working with clients, creating this system, and it was just really intense, 55-hour weeks, working with clients in session rooms, a lot of information. And then I'd go sit in a coffee shop for a couple hours, and the tectonic plates would stop shifting. My body would settle, and then incredible inspiration would come out. Now shoot forward to what I've learned in this last few years. It is absolutely in meditation, because I wasn't meditating often back then. I didn't realize that was contemplation back then. Now I'm much more formal about my meditation routine, much more formal about my contemplation routine. And so, this book we wrote, Shine, I mean, that is where most of my inspiration came from, is in meditation and in contemplation.
So 2 questions on that. First is, what is the routine? And then, do you journal as well?
Yes, not very often, but I absolutely do journal. And my journaling is with a legal pad. So I have a journal, I have a formal journal. I do capture some things there, and those are for what I consider to be like content insights, but it's more a legal pad. And so it's not something I'm keeping for all of time. That page most of the time gets ripped off and thrown in the garbage when I'm done. But it's even like with the title Shine, I was sitting there, came out of meditation, then I was in contemplation. I'm sitting with my legal pad, and I did this thing I learned about called hot penning, which you're familiar with. And I just started writing and letting words come out. And then I just literally wrote the word shine. It's like something forced my hand to write the word shine.
So great.
And it was like, this is it. Again, that's just one example. And then to your question for the routine, it's really simple. I meditate. It's about 30 minutes, 3 to 5 times a week. I ground myself, take a few deep breaths, and just kind of connect to all that is, and then just sit there quietly. My mind races for the first 10 minutes, and then somehow it just goes calm. And then magic tends to happen. Sometimes it's a dud. Sometimes there's magic. But nonetheless, at a minimum, what it does is just kind of brings me right down to the ground and centers me.
Do you do this in the morning, in the evening? When do you get started with this?
Typically in the morning.
Yeah. And then what part of that is contemplation?
And then so when I finish the meditation, sometimes I'll do it before the meditation, but when I come out of the meditation, then I will just spend some time pondering, thinking, contemplating, again, writing on my legal pad, just whatever's coming up for me.
And so how do you know what's going to come up?
Well, I never know what's going to come up.
Explain that. Like, take somebody who hasn't sat in contemplation through what happens when you sit and contemplate.
Well, so it's really important. And I would suggest 90% of the time, it's whatever comes up, and a lot of times it's just the day ahead. It might be, preparing for this podcast. I spend a little time doing that. It's whatever is coming up. So it's not like it's an agenda, it's specific, but I would say 10% of the time when I'm feeling a little overwhelmed, one of the tricks I will do is I will just list everything that's overwhelming me. And so sometimes I'm writing 15 things. Sometimes I'm writing 4 things. And then I'll just go then through each. Let's pretend there's 10 things I wrote down. I'll then go through each of the 10 and I'll just write some expanded notes on each one. And it really helps my clarity. The overwhelm goes away. I've actually sat with people doing this when they come to me overwhelmed. I hand them a legal pad and a pen and I say, all right, let's write everything that's overwhelming. So I will do that about 10% of the time. That's really clarifying.
Yeah.
But it's whatever's going on. And sometimes I'm looking back. That's pretty rare, 10% of the time. Most of the time I'm looking forward. A lot of times I'm just looking at the now, but it's just all about where I am, and lots of cool insights come from it.
Are you looking for answers, or are you just pondering questions?
I would say I'm looking for answers 20, 30% of the time. So it's not the majority of the time. The rest is, you're not liking this answer, but keep.
I love your answer. Why are you saying that? I love this answer.
We always do that. So I'm just letting come up, what is going to come up.
Yeah.
The moment.
Okay.
I wish I could come up with something specific, but now I'd love to turn it on you because you have such a disciplined routine. I think our listeners need to hear exactly what it is that you do.
Okay. Well, first, I always like to start by saying, don't use me as your gauge. Okay. But when I wake in the morning, the first thing I do is I meditate. So, I'm right to that. That's a time for many of us when we wake up, our mind starts racing right away. And so this is an opportunity for me to, in a sense, get a little bit of control of that and settle it down and really get into a peaceful place and practice being in the present moment right out of the gates. I learned that many years ago, and that's been useful for me. When I'm done, I journal. And so then I'm just coming up with any thoughts that are naturally coming to my mind. And then a lot of gratitude. I just spend a lot of time. What I notice about my gratitude journaling is I start simply, almost like, okay, I want to get this done so I can get going for the day. And then it's hard to stop. It just keeps going and going. And there's one thing after another thing. And then I'm just like, this is crazy how much things are in our lives to be grateful for. So that's my morning practice. And then my evening practice is 20 minutes before I go to bed. And that's just a time to settle my mind from all the craziness that's gone on throughout the day. Sometimes in the middle of the day, I will take a break and just sit and do a brief meditation, maybe 2 to 5 minutes. And sometimes I'll just lay down for 2 minutes on the floor and just let my body just be a blob and rest. We need that. We don't give ourselves the opportunity to do that. We go too hard. So anyway, those are some of the things that I do.
Let me just, I want to piggyback a couple of things on what you said, because, going back to the topic of this episode, it's about really understanding your true self. And what I'm hoping that you're hearing out there is, these are two ways, this meditation, this contemplation and or journaling, that Rob and I tap into our true selves. We're talking about helping you understand and tap into your true self. It's one of the ways to cancel all the noise. It's the way to remove the cocoon. It's the way to get the ego to subside, if not for this precious 30 minutes every day. So you are literally connecting with your true self. You're listening to your true self. Your true self is doing the speaking.
Yeah.
And then for what it's worth, I also do some lying meditation like you're talking about. I learned this a couple of years ago. I did not think it would be productive, but yeah, just laying there and going still and silent has also been profound. I don't do it as often as I do the regular meditation, if you will, or the sitting meditation, but that's been pretty profound as well.
One of the things, back to the true self, we have a lot of decisions to make, and I'll use myself as an example. A lot of inputs. I imagine everybody's in the same boat. There's a lot of data, a lot of opinions, a lot of things coming at us. For me, sometimes it just feels very confusing. I think every point's a good point. It's like, okay, we could go that way, we could go this way, we could go that way. They all sound good to me. I don't know. But what I notice is when we, or myself, but I've seen this with many, many others, when you stop and get quiet and you let all that data kind of settle, then you start to embody what is happening, embody in your body and listen. Just listen deeply, getting quiet, listening deeply. The answer is inside of you. Your true self will bring that out. It will guide you in the right direction.
Yeah. And I would also add to that, I believe we driven entrepreneurs, which is our audience, we're making 10 times the decision of the average person on the planet. Yeah. And this shows up throughout the entire day. If you will do this discipline, meditate, contemplate, prayer, stillness, whatever it is for you, 30 minutes a day, it has a lasting effect for the next 23 and a half hours in terms of all of your decisions throughout the day. And they will become more love-based decisions, again, from your true self, from inspiration, from intuition, as opposed to these ego-based, fear-based decisions throughout the day.
Gino, I think that is the perfect place for us to wrap up this episode. And our next episode, we're going to segue right into why it's important to know your true self as an entrepreneur. So perfect timing. I love that you did that. So as we wrap, I just want to remind you, each podcast that you hear from us is going to be kind of on the shorter side, 15 to 30 minutes. And during the podcast, Gino and I will be expanding and providing additional flavor on the concepts from the book Shine, the 10 Disciplines, sharing new content. And every now and then, we'll bring in a special guest. Every other episode, Gino will be doing a solo riff to share what's top of mind for him, new learnings, and personal experiences. And as I mentioned, I'll be asking the questions, and the flow of our conversation will always be pretty organic. So we hope you'll join us each week so you can learn to shed layers, free your true self, and shine.
Thank you for listening in today. We truly appreciate you taking the time to spend with us, and please tune in for the next episode. Until then, if you'd like to see where you are on your true self journey, go to shedandshinepodcast.com to take the true self assessment and receive personalized guidance. If you're all ready to begin your inner world journey with Rob and myself, please join us for the next round of the 10 Disciplines group coaching program. We wish you all the best in freeing your true self. Stay focused, and much love.